What is up, you guys? Good afternoon. um, so apparently, Canada is an artificial country with very little meaning, according to Yves-Francois Blanchet. He said this on the campaign trail uh, today, or it might have been yesterday, actually. And he has since stood by that point of view that Canada is an artificial country with very little meaning. Now, I don't know about you guys. It does feel like there's a lot of talk about there's a lot of how do I put it now? There's a lot of talk about separation from Canada. There's a lot of talk about separation from all sides of Canada. And I want to know from you guys. I want to know from you guys today. Obviously, I'll share that video of Yves-Francois Blanchet and what he said, what he actually said in a little while here. But before then, I want to know who's watching tonight. Who's watching? Say hi to me in the chat. Say hi to me in the chat. But is he right? Is Yves-Francois Blanchet correct to say that Canada is an artificial country with very little meaning? Which is it's wild because when you juxtapose that and you put that side by side with the fact that Trump has been talking about Canada as a non-viable state, and he has said that we're only viable if we're the 51st state. So when you put that in context, that Trump has been saying this about Canada, and now you see you hear Yves-Francois Blanchet of all people calling Canada an artificial country with very little meaning. It pisses me off. I'm not gonna lie. It's not the time. But I'm gonna share that video with you. Say hello to me in the chat if you're tuning in this afternoon. I want to know who's watching with me. I'm gonna share you exactly what Yves-Francois Blanchet said. But do you agree? Is Canada really an artificial country with very little meaning? Are we that different? Are we so different across east to west that you would rather see this country in pieces? Would you rather have Canada as it is, or should Canada really just go ahead and fucking divide? Anyways, here's what Yves-Francois Blanchet had to say. I'll play that for you now. Let me. I want to get your verdict on this because it really pissed me off that he would say this. Like, why would you? Like, it's not the time. You got to read the room. Is what I was thinking. But here goes. I'm going to play it off the CTV website here.
If I may, yesterday you said that you were an MP in a foreign parliament.
Yeah.
You are working pretty hard to hold the balance of power of that parliament. Isn't it this the definition of foreign interference?
We are, either we like it or not, part of an artificial country with very little meaning called Canada. Many people in Canada write to me and say, we'd like to have the same as Quebec has.
What the fuck?
As long as we're part of it and we get elected in this parliament, we are entitled to any right and privilege and opportunity being provided by the persons who vote. And I will relinquish none of them. And if it's a foreign parliament because this nation is not mine, I don't feel more at ease in the Canadian parliament than Mrs. Smith would feel at ease in the Assemblée nationale du Québec.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, Monsieur Blanchet, Raphaël du Canyon, CBC.
I want to pause there for a sec. He says he feels like a foreign an MP in a foreign parliament. I don't know. How do you guys feel about this? BB says, by that definition, every country is an artificial country. Do you mean by you mean by Yves-Francois Blanchet's definition? You got to clarify for me there. R says, I said on one of your videos that I don't know why that guy is contesting for prime minister. The truth is he's not contesting for prime minister. He's contesting to be the voice of Quebec. That's what he is. But it doesn't make this any more palatable for me that he's talking about Canada in this light, especially when Trump is saying all this shit about Canada not being a viable country. It pisses me off. It pisses me off. R goes on to say he shouldn't be allowed to contest. It's a shitty thing to say. BB says, yes, by him saying that everyone has their own idea of. Oh, yes, by him saying that everyone has their own idea of what Canada is. So here's my thing though. Obviously Quebec has been the loudest voice for separation of Canada, but they're not the only ones these days talking about separation. Obviously Alberta has been a louder voice talking about Western separation recently. And I know so there's people that watch the channel. I've had comments of people that watch the channel that have been pretty open about the idea of Western Canada or Alberta leaving Canada. Some people have even said Alberta should go join the United States, which is kind of wild when you think about it. But like, dude, you gotta read the room, man. But here's the thing, though. I will say this. Although this annoys me, he's not wrong. And I'll tell you why. Canada has been operating like a bunch of little countries as against being one country. And maybe this is what Mark Carney says when he says we gotta have one economy instead of 13. And that he's correct. And I think Pierre Poilievre would agree. That's Pierre Poilievre's ultimate goal in the end. But it fucking pisses me off. Like, especially imagine you're a person in Alberta getting zero equalization payments, and the province getting the highest equalization payments in Canada is talking about the country not functioning as a country, essentially. That would piss you off. It's like, and he said something and he was talking about entitlements and something like we're entitled. Like, bruh, dude, like you gotta read the room. And for me, it's just like, he said this during the debate. Let me see if I remember it correct. If I remember it in the kind of detail that he spoke it, he said something like, like Quebec would be willing to give up equalization payments if Western Canada, if Alberta would embrace clean energy or something like that. Might have been what he was talking about. BB says, okay, let me go back and get the comment. Get the comments here. Okay. So R says, how is this guy any different from Trump? I mean, this is a silly statement to make in the climate that we're in here, where our sovereignty as a country is being threatened, and where we're facing what can only be termed as possibly a national unity crisis right now. This is not what you need. This is not. You got to read the room. BB says, but being the loudest doesn't mean the majority. There's a reason Quebec has not separated. The majority of Quebecers, I guess you mean Quebecois there, but Quebecers don't want to separate. Same with Alberta separatists. And BB says, enough with the equalization payments. It isn't Alberta writing the checks to other provinces. It is simply an allocation of federal resources. Well, you say that, but you got to think about this, though. BC has been complaining about the distribution of the equalization payments and the federal transfers for a while. Alberta has had moments where they've actually really been pissed off about that. Like the Western provinces get really not that much, right? Saskatchewan doesn't get that much, if anything. BC close to nothing. Alberta probably nothing, and they're paying their fair share. Like, why is Quebec, who gets 50%? I think that was the stat that I saw. About 50% of the equalization payments leaving the federal coffers, complaining about not feeling Canadian. Like, I mean, I don't know. But equalization payments are obviously paid out because the federal government is trying to ensure that services and remain sort of equal across the country, irrespective of fiscal capacity. But okay, so BB says people are pissed off because they don't understand what it is. They think they are writing a check to other provinces. Okay, maybe you want to explain that a little bit. Okay, explain what you mean. Because I don't want to call you on something that I haven't properly understood. But you guys get in the comments, especially if you're from Alberta and people on that side of the world have obviously been feeling like this country is not serving them because they want to get their oil to market. They want to get their oil to Eastern Canada. Sometimes it feels a little bit. Here's where it gets annoying to me, right? Quebec is they buy oil from the United States from pipelines that go through the United States. Basically, they buy oil from the United States, and essentially they've proceeded to block pipelines here going across Canada, the Energy East pipeline, namely, because they say they don't want it. But there's in my mind, a certain hypocrisy to that. If you're gonna be talk, well, they say it's because they would the energy it's dirty energy, right? Well, if you're gonna hold that perspective, well, why are you buying oil from the United States? Well, here's the other point I'll make real quick, right? The at some point, I think it was Mark Carney during the debates that broached the topic about small modular reactors and nuclear power. And guess what Quebec said? No, they don't want nuclear energy either, right? And if you know anything about about artificial intelligence and some of the energy, the power that we would need in order to power that industry, you'll know that why nuclear energy is probably a very important resource that we need to develop in this country. BB says provinces do not contribute financially to the program. The equalization is. I don't think you're understanding my point, right? BB. You got to understand that those distributions are meant to help the provinces develop their infrastructure and public services and all of that stuff, right? That's what the equalization payments are meant to be, right? So, you're basically telling me that Quebec has more needs than Ontario, for example, which is our biggest province, right? You're telling me that Quebec has more needs than them in the federal government's eye, right? And so where is the I know there's sort of a formula that the government uses to determine who gets what, but when you really deep it down, you realize that the equalization payments is really about making the size of the equalization payments is really about making Quebec happy. Braveheart says Quebec feels like a spoiled child that the parent keeps sinking everything into while ignoring obedient kids. To be fair, I wouldn't say Alberta has been obedient recently. They're really pissed off at the moment. Kevin Boyle says Canada is no longer a country we used to know and love. And no, I do not like the direction the Liberals are taking it in. Well, to be fair, if we're being fair about this, Kevin, I don't know that the Conservatives are going to be the ones to unite Canada either, because you got to see a lot of the policies are ones that they're not necessarily Pierre Poilievre have basically scrapped almost every single environmentally friendly initiative in his costed platform. Done. He basically disposed a lot of that, and so obviously that's not gonna go well with indigenous peoples. That's not gonna go well with certainly not Quebec, right? So I don't know what that does for our unity. It favors Alberta and Saskatchewan and parts of Western Canada that want to see those kinds of things, but certainly those provinces that are more in favor, like Atlantic Canada, not just Quebec, that want to see action on climate. Well, you're not gonna easily get them on board. You're certainly not gonna get Indigenous peoples on board. BB says, "No, I'm telling you that people in Alberta who are upset about it think that Alberta is writing a check to other provinces. Alberta isn't paying a single dime into the payments." Well, sure. What I am saying, I guess we're making two different points here. I'm saying that it's like having 13 kids. I know that's a wild number to think of, but it's like having. Let me remove this video for a little while here so that you can see me. It's like having 13 kids, and then you sort of decide that your second oldest child gets the most allocation of certain resources, of your limited resources, based on the fact that they've said that they'll leave the house unless you unless you unless you up their pocket money. Like, it's kind of the way it is. You can see why people would be annoyed with that. And anyways, I don't want to go too far into that. Kevin Boyle says Quebec is treated like a country. They are treated like a country. I hadn't realized, because I'm not too familiar with Quebec, right? So, but I hadn't realized that they refer to the premier of Quebec as prime minister, like Monsieur Prime Minister, essentially. And that's wild, within the country. That Quebec gets special privileges to the point where, like, the premier is called a prime minister in their own right. That's wild, right? Just Iman says, have I made a prediction about the election yet? Yes, I have. There's a video out on the channel, and what I said was I expect Mark Carney to win. I did tell you. I did make a prediction that Mark Carney would win a minority, but you can go watch the video. I give you all the reasons why I think Mark Carney will win. But I've also said I think he'll win a minority, which I think will be interesting from where we are right now. It looks like he's going to win a majority, right? But I think it will be interesting to see if he underperforms his numbers, like I expect he will. But I think he wins. I think Mark Carney wins. But we talked about how sneaky it was that in the last live we did. We talked about how sneaky it was that Trump is suddenly back as front page news all of a sudden. Trump for a while there it was quiet about Trump, and then I said this, but I know BB doesn't agree with me. We kind of had a little thing about it in the comment section in my last video. Don't worry, BB. Don't worry. You're still my guy, dude. You're still my guy. But the fact is that at the moment where the Liberals seem to be going down in the polls, suddenly, and I thought it was suspicious timing, suddenly the CBC goes and asks a question to Trump's press secretary and says something like, "Oh, why has Trump decided that he's not going to call Canada the 51st state anymore?" And I was like, what the bloody hell? Why the bloody hell would the CBC, I mean, go and ask Trump's press secretary after Trump has been quiet himself on the 51st state rhetoric? Now, you can ask about tariffs. You can ask about actual stuff that isn't basically the ballot question right now. No thanks to how the Liberals have leveraged this. And again, I don't hate the player, I hate the game. It is what it is. The Liberals have this opportunity and have used it wisely. In fact, I think someone and I'm going to say something really wild right here. Someone needs to check Mark Carney. Is at his next medical checkup. I think Mark Carney has a genie up his butt. You know why? I've never seen anybody that's more lucky than Mark Carney. So at his next colonoscopy or whatever, I want somebody to tell me that he's not got a genie up his butt. Because here's the thing. I was expecting, I was really expecting that the whole him not giving the people the information about whether Trump called Canada the 51st state during that call with Trump, during that call they had about a month ago, him keeping that from people, I thought that was gonna go against him, and people were gonna be like, "Yo, why would you ever say that? Why wouldn't you be transparent with people?" And since we're basically back in the exact same situation here, where Canada's sovereignty is being disrespected, we have tariffs, and what is the advantage? What is the fundamental advantage that Carney has in this election? His advantage was he was the best negotiator. Well, clearly he's not if we're still in this situation. But I mean, to be fair, if we're balancing this out, he's still in caretaker mode. He's still in caretaker mode. He doesn't have the mandate to go and actually negotiate with Trump. So BB is coming at me again. Okay, we're gonna have this. If you want to have this out live, man, I'm here for you. Come on. Let's get it. Anyways, BB says Harper wanted to give Quebec even more power with the Meech Lake Accords. Okay, interesting. BB says you're claiming the CBC is working hand in hand with the Liberal Party when there is no evidence to support that claim. I did say it was a conspiracy theory, BB, and this is what I do, right? If I'm gonna say something that is strictly my opinion, and you don't have to agree with my opinion, as I said, I encourage you guys to think far and think wide. Give me your opinion. That's why we're here, right? That's why I'm doing this live and not making a video for you. So I encourage you to have your own opinions. It is what it is. But I happen to think my opinion is that the CBC really wanted this Trump narrative to come back. Now, yeah, no, BB, I definitely said before I launched in that line that it is a conspiracy theory, and you don't have to believe me here, but it is hella suspicious that the CBC, with 8 days or whatever, a week to go to an election, would go and ask basically the ballot question in order to influence the narrative of the election, and then proceed to talk about, oh, look at this, look what we found, Trump is back in the news. Yeah, because you brought him back, guys. You brought him back. It is hella suspicious to do that, right? That's my opinion. But again, you don't blame the player. You blame you blame the game. But here's what I wanted to say, though. And speaking of the games that are being played here, and I'm deviating quite a bit from the topic, but this is what we do on live, right? We don't know where we're gonna land, but it's a journey like that. It's a journey. But I feel like the Liberals have been playing some really dirty games in this thing. So, in fact, that CBC story, what I suspect, again, conspiracy theory here, is that someone on the Liberal Party in the war room probably leaked the fact that Trump mentioned the 51st state in that call with Mark Carney. And I dare you to disagree with me, BB, and any other person in the chat. I will have it out. I think that the Liberal Party probably leaked that information about the 51st state to the CBC. That's the conspiracy theory I'm rolling with. Okay? Prove me wrong. Because we know that this particular ballot question favors the Liberals. We know that it favors the Liberals. And we know that because we were not talking about Trump for a little while, the Liberals were going down on the polls. Right? And now look where we are. And here's the second thing I was talking about Mark Carney being the luckiest bugger there is in the world. Here's what I want to see with I'll bring it back to Yves-Francois Blanchet, right? right now, right here, where we are is the reason. Partly, what has driven the liberals to where they are right now is because of this. People are wrapping the flag around themselves. If I use what the mainstream uses in terms of their language, there, people are wrapping the flag around themselves. People are wrapping themselves in the flag, right? That's what has driven the liberals. If we're talking about affordability and all of that, people would vote for change. They would vote for the conservatives just simply because they just want something different, not because not because there is necessarily evidence that the liberals would be any better in terms of fiscal responsibility. Maybe not even by much, right? Who knows? But because we're talking about Trump and there's threats to our sovereignty as a country, now the liberals have the upper hand there because they were the only ones that understood the assignment, right? Pierre Poilievre till this day has not learned to pivot the right way to deal with this, unfortunately. So this whole thing with Blanchet, Yves-Francois Blanchet, calling Canada an artificial country, well, this benefits Mark Carney again, in my mind, because he essentially now I do not want to see, and here's how we'll test where Quebec is at. I do not want to see many Bloc Québécois people being returned to parliaments after this statement. And Bibi is saying not Bibi has said earlier in the chat that not many Quebecois Quebecois want to leave Canada. That's why they haven't left. Yes, and that is true. And now more than ever, I think they need to show that. I don't want to see the Bloc Québécois right now in Parliament, especially after he made this statement, because it is very simple. Is putting a decision before them, and I don't know if there's anybody who's from Quebec or who has lived in Quebec in the chat, because I want to get a feel for how the Quebecers think. I don't want to come at this too much from the Western perspective, because as a Westerner, it does really piss me off. Not gonna lie, it pisses me off. I would rather this country function as an effective country as against like functioning as these tiny little segments with everybody seeking to leave every time and time again. I feel like as a country we don't have a direction that we want to go. There's just little bits and pieces there and there, which is just difficult to deal with, right? BB. Okay, so this way you want to go. But and let me finish my point here. Let me finish my thought. Mark Carney is good. I think this favors him because right now, with people wrapping themselves around the flag, this was a stupid statement by Yves-Francois Blanchet. He did not read the room. Now, what I want to see coming out of this election is I don't want to see Bloc Québécois MPs being returned to Parliament. Unfortunately, that favors Mark Carney again, right? That's why I said he's the luckiest bugger there is, because how do you plan? Like, even when he makes mistakes, like, oh, he's not transparent, it works in his favor. Like, even now, with how do you plan for Yves-Francois Blanchet to say the dumbest shit you've ever said? How do you plan for Jagmeet Singh to absolutely lose his shit and start fighting with Yves-Francois Blanchet, which is actually the next part of that video I'm going to show you guys very soon? Apparently, Yves-Francois Blanchet and Jagmeet Singh are now going at each other. They're both basically calling each other useless. And there's a question I actually have for you guys. But let's finish this segment first. BB says during his press conference, 3 different reporters asked him about the call. Were they all liberal plants? Look, here's what I'll tell you, right? You can't influence the fallout, but you can influence the narrative, right? The narrative clearly favors the liberals. Now, I'm not saying they then planted people to ask him those questions, because clearly you could see in the press conference that he was flustered, and in fact, he didn't want to come out with the truth. And this is one thing that is turning into a theme with Mark Carney. I don't want to say he lies because that's what the conservatives will say, but he does have a tendency to tell subjective truths. I know that also means he lied, but you get my point. He he has a tendency to tell subjective truths. So, for example, when Mark Carney said he wasn't part of the decision that moved Brookfield headquarters to the United States, to New York. Now, I understand why Brookfield moved their headquarters to New York, right? It's so that they could be included as part of the S&P 500. It's one of the rules of being included in the S&P 500. But he said, obviously, because it wasn't politically expedient, he said he didn't. He said he wasn't part of that decision. Now that is a subjective truth, because when the decision was made to move the headquarters, he was the chair. Now, the other side of that is when the vote, as the way I remember this, when the vote was actually done, he wasn't chair anymore. But it's a subjective truth like that. It's a subjective truth. He was clearly part of the decision, right? If you look at it, fundamentally. Bibi says, again, you should be asking, why are conservatives so weak on Trump? Again, that's the game. That is exactly the game. It's not anybody's fault that Pierre Poilievre has found it difficult to tackle that issue of Trump. It's not anybody's fault that Pierre Poilievre has sort of tethered his brand a little bit or has made his brand remarkably similar, especially and also his policies, to be fair, remarkably similar to what Trump is. You're right. I think you're getting me a little wrong, because you think that I'm against the liberals playing the game. It's the game. It's the game. That is what you do. In fact, what I'm planning to do on Monday, I might bring a marketing executive onto during our mega stream. It's going to be a long stream on Monday, starting maybe somewhere around 7 or 6:30. It's going to be a long stream for election day, and we're going to do a few hours. But I'm going to bring probably a marketing executive friend of mine. He's going to be in maybe like 30 minutes or something. And we'll talk about the different strategies, and because most people don't understand just how much marketing goes into these election campaigns. Okay, so let me complete what BB's saying here. Why is it an advantage? Okay. So BB, okay, let me move to Boogeyman here. Boogeyman says, because you can't be tough against Trump when Canada has no strength due to liberals crushing the Canadian economy for 10 years. Yep. But to be fair, I think Mark Carney has just been talking tough. I don't think he's actually going to be tough. Because think about it. When Trump announced his auto tariffs and announced his tariffs on aluminum and steel, you know what our retaliatory tariff was? We put reciprocal tariffs on auto parts, essentially. That's all we did. So it was a very limited, and I agree that we can't go at the US dollar for dollar. We're gonna lose that, right? So I agree with the approach, but for the amount of words he's saying, he's not going as hard as clearly has been implying with some of his statements, talking about, oh, we will win, it's a fight, we will win this trade war and those kinds of things. He's clearly not going that hard. In fact, what Mark Carney is trying to do is diversify Canada's economy, which is where I think is a strong point for Mark Carney in this platform, to be fair. He is probably the only one of the two candidates who is taking diversification of Canada's economy seriously. I think I think on Poilievre's side, he's focused a lot on sort of developing a domestic economy, which is kind of similar because Mark Carney does cover that base very well. But I don't think there's enough vision in terms of diversifying into Europe and stuff like that. So you're right that we can't. It's not about Trump necessarily, but to be fair, I guess you're right. You can't be tough against Trump because Trump is a is a wild man. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna use some of the words that actually popped in my head in that moment. But yeah, you're right that the liberals and I don't think it's just the last 10 years though. I know people like to narrow all Canada's problems to the last 10 years. Stephen Harper didn't build the pipeline. He didn't build the Energy East pipeline specifically. Is what I had to say, right? He didn't get the Energy East pipeline built. So I know people like to confine Canada's problem to the last 10 years. I mean, you could argue the Liberal Party and Trudeau government actually bought a pipeline, and although they ended up overblowing, going way over budget with their pipeline there. BB, I've clearly said I don't hate the game. The Liberals are playing the game that they should be playing, because if they went straight up with the, I think you think obviously I keep telling you guys on this channel, I'm here to be fair. I know what the game is, but you have to. What I'm saying to you is you have to acknowledge the game that is being played. That's all I'm saying. I'm not against Mark Carney playing the game that he has to play in order to win an election. It is what it is. Okay, it is what it is. Because I mean, here's one thing: I'm not the person that will ever feel sorry for Pierre Poilievre if he loses. In fact, I'm not the person to feel sorry that Tim Houston seems to be circling around his carcass right now, and trying to, or the rumor is that Tim Houston is actually trying to take his spot as the leader of the Conservative Party, right? Premier Tim Houston. So, because you got to think Pierre Poilievre, this is the game he played, right? Like he part of his rise to prominence was fanning the flames against Justin Trudeau. Oh, BB says you got to realize that there's a huge difference between when you read my comments and you're okay. Fair enough. That's a good way to tell me I'm slow with the comments. Okay, fine. Boogeyman says EU is the slowest growing economy in the world, even worse than Canada. Tying your economy to theirs would only wreck Canada's economy. You know what? That's a good point. But it's not just the EU. It's not about, you don't have to tie your economy to the EU. I mean, China right now, they trade part of China, I think the share of their trade that the US actually accounts for is maybe about 15-20%. Which is why, and now obviously we're not China, but which is why China is able to go head to head, toe to toe with the US right now, with the US wilding out. This is why the US, China is able to go head to head with them, and not capitulate in the way a lot of countries are probably going to capitulate to Trump's demands, right? So it's not about tethering our economy to the EU. It's about creating options, which is why I'll bring it back, which is why I think we need a pipeline in this country. Because, I mean, we can't even effectively put tariffs on the US, because guess what? If we even try to say we slapped an export tariff on Alberta oil, which we probably shouldn't do, if say we did that though, well, the US, which basically supplies Ontario and Quebec with oil, well, they can just do the same to us, or they can cut off the oil from those places. What then, right? Anyways, so I personally, I'm still asking though, if there's somebody who is from Quebec who is familiar with Quebec, let me know in the chat. Actually, I have some questions for you. But let's get back to the main topic here. Do you agree that, because I think that I happen to think that Yves-Francois Blanchet isn't wrong here to say Canada as an artificial country. We're not functioning as an effective country. We're not functioning as an effective country. So it's just he hasn't read the room to say this. That's just my thing. But you guys let me know, what's your opinion? Do you think, by definition, like, is this country, what do you think? Is this a right statement to make? Is this a right assessment of where Canada is at? Just Iman says, what happens to the cons after this? Well, I think there's already people raising their hands about replacing Pierre Polyev. Well, not raising their hands. They're kind of like doing it on the on down low. You know, there's been rumors that that's why I brought up Team Houston. I think he's the premier of Nova Scotia, I want to say. There's been talk that that he might look to raise his hand to replace Pierre Polyev, because obviously in Canada the way it tends to work with the major party leaders is if you lose, you get out of Dodge. You're no longer leader of the party, right? So for all intents and purposes, it looks like if Polyev doesn't win, he's done. He's done as party leader, right? So I think the Conservatives will be fine. They'll try their luck again next time. But to be fair, if we're being fair here, the Conservatives tend to have a very uphill battle in every single election. Unfortunately, this was the one election where maybe they had the chance until Trump happened. You know, they actually had a chance, because a lot of the votes in Atlantic Canada, in Ontario and Quebec won't go in their favor, right? And if you don't win, what's the lesson we've learned in Canada's election? If you don't win Ontario, you're done, right? That really influences your chances of really, like, if you don't have a good showing, I should say, in Ontario, if you don't at least split the votes there, you don't really get elected in Canada. That's the way it is. In fact, I think the Liberals are leading in Ontario right now. I probably, last I saw, it was probably by like double digits or something. Right? In fact, the difference now between the Liberals winning the majority and the minority is probably going to lie in Quebec, right? But with the Conservatives, their historical base is, Saskatchewan, where they won probably all the seats. I don't think the Liberals have a seat in Saskatchewan at all. I might be wrong. Somebody correct me there. Alberta is obviously a bit usually splits between mostly Conservative, but sometimes the NDP gets a share of stuff. And they get a little bit in rural BC as well, right? And that's limited, right? Compared to the big farm that the Liberals are playing with in Atlantic and Central Canada. Anyways, Braveheart says he is part of the reason the country isn't functioning. He is complaining. He is part of the part. Okay. BB says, oh, okay. I think BB is saying that the Conservatives should split into two parties again: the far right Maple MAGA and the Progressive Conservatives. Dude, you're a liberal giving the Conservatives advice here, dude. You're gonna get shit for that in the chat. You're gonna get so much shit. Yes, but to be fair though, I do agree with you. I think that, but you could argue that the real MAGA side of the Conservatives is essentially what Maxime Bernier stands for. Is it not? Maxime Bernier and the PPC, that's probably as far right as you go in Canada, to be fair. If you really zone all the way into like full on conspiracy theory MAGA, then I don't know there's too much of that in Canada, to be fair. I don't know that that's the strategy that gets anybody elected. Progressive Conservatives, yeah. And the Progressive Conservatives they've got some superstars right now. Tim Houston, as I've mentioned, is a Progressive Conservative. Obviously, Doug Ford, Captain Canada himself. Michael Foster says, you need to realize that China's economy is in free fall and unemployment has plagued the entire country. they cannot go toe to toe with the US, and yet they have, and yet they have, and yet they have. You know, people. We believe a lot of things about China, right? That the economy is in free fall, and that is all true. But you got to also compare what is the United States doing right now. Is the United States? I mean, which country is doing substantially better than China is right now? Because if you look at it in that context, you realize that the criticism of China is not necessarily as founded as you might think. I mean, you compare the U.S. certainly in their debts in the debts that the U.S. carries. Compare that to China. You know, compare even the infrastructure of the U.S. Compare that to China, and then maybe you can start to kind of even that out and realize China. We have certain beliefs about China here in the West that are not don't necessarily appreciate what China does, right? That's my opinion there. Habibi says conservatives only had a chance because the left was vote splitting. This year, the left is getting behind the liberals, and yes, that is exactly what is happening. The collapse of the NDP vote has been absolutely wild. Boogeyman says the only way the West will get representation in Canadian government is if they leave. I mean, what do you mean representation? The last prime minister before Trudeau was a Westerner, was he not? He was Stephen Harper is an Albertan, last I remember. Is he not? I mean, that's representation. I'm not sure what you mean there. Oh yeah, Just Eman is asking me if I'm a Marvel fan. I am a Marvel fan, but I think the highlight of the Marvel franchise was Avengers Endgame. There hasn't been. I don't know. I don't know if I'm feeling some of their recent creative directions. You know, I don't know. I haven't found a movie I could really get my teeth into. Did you guys see? I don't know which of you watches Marvel here, but have you seen the new? I guess the new Captain America movie, the one with Hawkman now playing Captain America. Dude, I was like, what the hell am I watching? No, I did not. I did not like it at all. And one of the reasons why I go, and I'm going to get back on politics. Don't worry. Don't worry. Before someone bangs the table, why is this guy talking? What's this guy talking about Marvel? But for me, part of the reason why I go watch Marvel movies is some of the action sequences, right? And I think that the Marvel has recently been focusing a lot on the dramatic. I don't go watch Marvel movies for the drama for the drama. I watch Marvel movies for the story sometimes, but also for the action sequences, for the special effects, you know. That's what I go to watch. That's what I go watch that's what I go watch Marvel movies. That's what I enjoy in Marvel movies. And the Hawkman movie, some of the punches were like you could see the punches that the Hawkman was, well, I guess he's Captain America now, but you could see the punches he was throwing from like last week. Like the punches were that slow. The punches you could see them from last week. I was like, he would just go. Arr! I was like, dude, what the hell is this? This is come on. You got to train and be better. Anyways, that's enough about Marvel. You could tell. I'm really annoyed. BB says, not that they should split. I said they could split. Dude, why are you stirring the pot, dude? Why are you being like that? Okay, so let's see. I want to give I think I've been giving BB too much favor. I'm showing too much favoritism to you, BB. So don't be too mad if I skip some of your comments. Boogeyman says US inflation is falling right now and wages are increasing. Yes, it's falling and wages are okay. Trump is trying to get them in a, obviously inflation is falling, right? That's a worldwide phenomenon. Wages are increasing. Okay. I don't know how that, here's the thing, right? Wages increasing is helpful, but for what Trump is trying to do, which is he's trying to bring back manufacturing, it might not be the best idea to increase wages at the same time, especially because you're competing with China, where they have China and to be fair, some other Asian countries that have access to really cheap labor, right? So if you want to compete at scale with those countries, you got to make your production, competitive in terms of, you got to put your inputs to production, your labor costs. You got to try and make that competitive. Well, the other way to do that is with tariffs, right? But um, I, I don't know that increasing wages is helping Trump achieve what he is trying to achieve. Because I mean, is he going to be protectionist for the next century? You know, if you're going to be competitive on the global market, you gotta make your production costs make sense. Except that you guys want to buy a $20,000 iPhone. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you want a $20K iPhone. Let's see. What's it saying here? Okay. Actually, there's a comment here. Braveheart is asking if isn't Mark Carney from Alberta. He grew up in Alberta, but he was originally born in the Northwest Territories. But some people, I'm gonna blow you guys' minds. There was actually there's a conservative alt media guy. I'm not gonna say his name because I've been warned by my producer not to shit on anybody's YouTube channel. So here's what I'm gonna say. This guy, I'm gonna give you a few hints. And I'm gonna give a thumbs up to whoever gets the name right, but I'm not gonna say the name myself. Okay. So this particular dude writes to refer to Mark Carney as a 3 passport carrying WEF globalist, WHORE. Not gonna say that word. He calls, and he actually made a video title with exact 3 passport carrying, because McCartney he's a citizen of 3 countries, Canada being one of them, but also obviously the UK. But he calls him a 3 passport carrying WEF globalist. You can add the rest there. Apologies to whoever gets it right. I'll see whoever the first person to name that creator. Anyways, BB says the Captain America movie should have been a Hulk movie. Yup. Yup. Boogeyman says, yeah, but all politicians in Canada, no matter where they come from, have to cater to the East. Yeah. That is fair. There is a lot of East focused. There's been the policies on the federal level have been a little bit East focused. Okay, so here's what I want to do next. There's another part of that video that I shared earlier with Yves-Francois Blanchet that I want us to go through, because there's a fight going on, obviously a verbal fight here between Yves-Francois Blanchet and Jagmeet Singh. Okay, so let's watch the rest of that video, and I'm gonna ask you guys a question when we come back. Okay, well, you guys want to do that with me? Let's do that. So let's listen to the rest of that video.
You're looking to collaborate with Mark Carney. Well, you have to. And Claude Saint-Pierre Plamondon, in his endorsement letter for you, calls him an existential threat to Quebec. So can you collaborate with an existential threat to Quebec, or is this endorsement letter a little perhaps wrong or unhelpful for your purposes?
I will repeat something I said very candidly yesterday. My approach is on two different levels. First, Canada will pick Mark Carney as its prime minister. I can change nothing in that. Even if there were 45 MPs from the bloc, I cannot change that. So we have to collaborate. He is a different person from Mr. Trudeau, though the people around him are exactly the same. Uh, but on the other side, if we speak language, secularity of the state, immigration, energy, environment, aluminum, lumberwood, milk and supply management, uh, fisheries, aerospace, telling the truth, not investing from a green fund into oil and gas for half its investments. All of those are very, very serious reasons for Quebecers to doubt the opportunity of having a too strong mandate for Mr. Carney. And I would even add to that if the questions I have raised during the campaign, which is not over, have helped Canadians to think and consider different options before making their decision, then I might have been useful for Canada. So I'm a good neighbor.
One different option for Canadians might be the NDP, which, like you, is pitching itself as, the party that should hold the balance of power. Mr. Singh, at least for the second time in this campaign, has called you useless this morning. Can you explain why you would be better off holding the balance of power, why you're the better option than the NDP?
I will let you deal with the uselessness of my party. And if I were Mr. Singh, I would do anything not to be compared with the Bloc Québécois at present time. So he may say whatever he wants. I don't really care.
Okay, so you guys, we've got the what I would like to call the useless Olympics going on over here. I call it the useless Olympics because these two parties are basically competing for who has been more useless, who has been the most useless in parliament. Right? You've got Jagmeet Singh basically throwing shots, and he has had a spectacular fall over the last, like, also it almost feels like he's unraveling during this campaign a little bit. It feels like it feels a little bit like Jagmeet Singh is unraveling sometimes over this period, where in his own way, Yves-Francois Blanchet himself has also been unraveling a little bit as well, because I don't know where he came up with this whole he came out with this whole artificial country nonsense in a time when, if you read the room, you know that you shouldn't be saying that, right? That's why Mark Carney's winning so much. So here's a question for you guys. And I see here that BB and Boogeyman are going at it about what the definition of inflation is. I'm gonna let you guys have your fun there. But here's a question for you guys. Who has been the most useful? Who has been more useful in parliament? Who would you say has been more useful in parliament? Yves-Francois Blanchet or Jagmeet Singh? Who is more useless? Who has been the useless one? If you were analyzing their term in government, which of them has been more useless? You guys get in the chat. Let me know right now. Who is more who is more useless? Because it looks like if the polls are to be believed, that I mean, to be fair, the Yves-Francois Blanchet looks like he will come out of this, or he might come out of this with still having party status with the Bloc Québécois. On the NDP side, it's looking like Jagmeet Singh is not going to come out quite as good. He might even lose his riding, not too far away from me here in Burnaby. So I want to know who has been more useless. Obviously, Yves-Francois Blanchet has been pushing more obvious Quebec-centered policies, and on Jagmeet Singh's side, he has been obviously, you've heard about these guys are still going at it about inflation. Uh, you've heard about pharmacare and childcare and some of the and $10 a day childcare and dental care, right? BB says Singh accomplished childcare benefits. He fell off the wagon the last 2 years when Maple Maga started making fun of it. Well, I mean, he's also had some controversies of his own, though. I mean, there was a time, there was this picture of him a while ago where he had this really expensive watch on, and he just really rubbed people the wrong way. The Rolex gate, I like to call it. It rubbed people off the wrong way because here's this guy talking about workers and talking about the common man, you know, walking about with like a really expensive Rolex. And you know how people like to hate, especially when it looks like you have more money than them, right? Um, so that was part of where Jagmeet Singh really really suffered. But you guys let me know. Um, let me see. What are you guys fighting about the inflation thing? Um, okay, that's too much for me. I can't go back that far. But I want to say though that, to be fair, in terms of you gotta when you evaluate Yves-Francois Blanchet, you gotta evaluate him from the perspective of Quebec. And in Parliament, he has protected very well supply management. And that was one of the things he was demanding from Justin Trudeau when he gave Justin Trudeau that ultimatum that he gave him a while ago, if you guys remember. And he has also fought for expansions to old age security, right? That's that's one of the things. I think I saw a stat not too long ago that Quebec has a really an aging population, as we all do, but more so, a lot more so in Quebec. And that expanding old age security in that way does favor Quebec a little bit. Although obviously the rest of Canada still benefits, but so supply management, old age security, those are things that you could say that Yves-Francois Blanchet has championed in Parliament. Uh, on the national scale, you can't compare Yves-Francois Blanchet on that scale because Jagmeet Singh has been good enough to achieve. He achieved dental care. He achieved, well, he pushed the Trudeau government to get in with $10 a day child care and pharmacare and dental care. So, in my opinion, I would say that, to be fair, the Yves-Francois Blanchet has been the more useless one, if we're being honest. For being honest, uh, but it's interesting that this is the argument that we're having right now. But here's what I want to know as well: if these two guys, if Jagmeet Singh and Yves-Francois Blanchet were the only two guys contesting in this election, who would you vote for and why? Which of them do you think would make a better prime minister? I know none of them is actually trying to win the election. They're now trying to maintain party status first, and then also uh, hold the balance of power in government. So I'm curious, who do you think who do you think would make the better prime minister? I want to know. Uh, I'm gonna read what you guys. I'm gonna read what Boogeyman says. BB thinks if you have less inflation from one year to the next, inflation is falling. But inflation is falling when prices go down, not up. Boogeyman, you gotta tell me, you're right in some regard there, because you gotta tell me if you live somewhere where you've ever seen prices go down. Because as far as I know, prices have never gone down ever. Where I live, prices are always going up. Prices are always going up. So yes, inflation inflation is basically an increase in price, as you rightly pointed out there. And in some regard, I guess you make sense when you say that uh, prices don't necessarily come down. So okay. So BB, how about you provide a different explanation of what inflation is? And I'll wait for you guys on that. But so I've asked you guys already, and you guys need to. How about you guys? You guys tell me what you think there. Who is potentially the better prime minister between Yves-Francois Blanchet and Jagmeet Singh? You guys let me know, because I'm looking at it right now. Jagmeet Singh seems like the kind of guy that would be that would abandon all fiscal anchors whatsoever in favor of like social policy. And to be fair, if I was picking, I would say personally that Yves-Francois Blanchet is probably the better guy for prime minister if we were picking between Jagmeet Singh and Yves-Francois Blanchet. Bibi says inflation is related to the macroeconomy of the country, not your average grocery. Okay, so you're talking about by definition there. And Boogeyman is saying in the States prices are going down right now. Well, that's because that's because it's not, I don't know, it's not sustainable to pay I don't know $10 for a crate or whatever they were paying for a crate of eggs. You say prices are going down, but you got to compare what you can't really yeah. I think Boogeyman agrees with me here and says Blanchet would be a better prime minister if you, I guess, compared to Jagmeet Singh. You guys let me know. Who do you think would be the better prime minister, Jagmeet Singh or Yves-Francois Blanchet? I think it's Blanchet, but you guys tell me why. I want to know why. It's the why that I think is important. But yeah, Boogeyman was saying, well, prices are going down right now, but you gotta understand that the prices did not go up in a normal trajectory. Like it was a big jump, right? That's what like I'll give you the example of the price of eggs, right? It was a big jump because of bird flu, right? So my point when I say prices going down is like when you're on the normal trajectory of inflation, which I guess is averages like maybe like 2% a year. When you're on the normal trajectory of inflation, like when these prices of eggs, for example, come down to a normal trajectory, they'll never return to the point where they were before. They will never return to a price lower than the rate of inflation. Is kind of what I mean there. Okay, that's what I mean there. Maybe one of these days I'll get an economist online. I will talk about what inflation is. But the truth is inflation is always inflation is always rising. That's why people advise you not to hold, especially when you're young, not to hold not to hold all your investments not to hold cash, especially when you're young, right? Because otherwise inflation will erode your wealth over time. Boogeyman says Jagmeet would be the same as the liberals. Yeah, I think it would be worse, it might be worse. Because I don't know that beyond social policy there's anything to Jagmeet Singh beyond social policy. I haven't seen much from I haven't seen much from him by way of like other policies. Boogeyman says overall prices are going down in the States on average. Okay. I'll have to look that up then. I'll have to look that up. Prices going down under the below the rate of inflation is interesting. It's really interesting. And BB is firing back right away. They're not going down. They're not going down. Let's see. You know what? While you guys are arguing about that, the problem though is if I Google this now, it's not there's so much there's so much subjective news that you're not gonna find anything really concrete, and I fear it will be a waste of time. Um, but somebody Google it. I give me a source. I want to know. I want to know. Boogeyman, if you have a source for why you say prices are going down, uh, at the as the kind of significant extent that you're talking about. Yes, you're right, BB. The opposite of inflation is deflation. And that means your economy is okay. Well, yeah. Can I just say you're both right? Because you kind of are as well, BB. Yes, deflation does mean that your economy is well that stuff is losing value essentially. Um, so there is that. And especially with money and the value of money, that's a big problem. Deflation is a big problem. But then then again, I'm not an economist, so I don't want to I don't want to get too far into that. Interesting. BB is saying it would be a waste of time, and that's why we use an annual inflation rate as a metric of the economy. You guys seem to want to. You guys seem like you want to talk about you want to talk about inflation here. Um, so I don't want this to be to be a long live. But I'm curious though. There was this is the other thing that Yves-Francois Blanchet said in his response there. He said that Mark Carney cannot be trusted because there was when he was when he was the chair of the Green Fund of Brookfield. Essentially, he even then Brookfield was still buying pipelines. They were still investing in stuff that isn't green, and and obviously Kanye has not been transparent. We've talked about that earlier. How do you guys what's your trust meter right now? How do you feel about Mark Carney? Do you think he can be trusted? Do you think he can be trusted? Do you think that Carney is the kind of person we want to give a majority? I'm curious about that. What do you think? What do you think? Do you think that Carney is a person that we want to give a majority? He has shown that he has the capacity to speak from speak from two sides of his mouth a little bit. Easy. BB says I need a beer after talking to Boogie. Come on, man. Come on, man. Be nice. Boogie, hopefully you guys you grab a beer as well and you guys can be friends, over beers. You can have you can have a debate over beers. Whoever loses drinks the next bottle. Anyways, I thank you guys for joining me tonight though. This afternoon. I guess it's coming to the evening if you're in Ontario. But here's what's coming for you guys. Here's what's coming on Monday. I will be doing. Obviously, I told you guys about the long mega stream we're gonna have. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe so that you can join me with that in that stream. I plan to actually bring some guests on. I'll bring some guests on. Some of my buddies will come and tell you about the experiences of the election and why they're voting, who they're voting, or their impression of the election. So you won't have to listen to me for 3 or 4 hours or whatever amount of time we stay online here to watch for the results, because that's essentially what it's going to be. We're gonna be watching for the results. We're gonna watch to see if Makani does indeed bring this lead that the polls are talking about. If he brings it home, I know I'm co-opting what Pierre Poilievre says here, but it doesn't look like Pierre Poilievre is bringing shit home. if we're being honest, but I'd be very surprised if he brings it home. It would be a big surprise. BB says Carney can be trusted to the extent most politicians can be trusted. Liberals don't don't worship their leader like Maple Vaga. Dude. Dude, I'm surprised you haven't incurred the wrath of. I feel like the people that are Polyev fans, Polyev supporters here are actually so nice. Like usually when I say something, you gotta tell me you gotta tell me how you gotta teach me how your ways here, how you're saying some of the things you're saying. Because here's one thing I've noticed: if I ever say something negative, and I'm a fair guy, I like to believe I'm a fair guy, but if I ever say something negative about Pierre Polyev, I usually get insults. Like, I'm surprised that nobody, and I think this is a testament to how good the chat is. I think people here want to engage on an intellectual level, and I love that. I love that because that's the community I'm trying to build here, right? I want everybody coming from different perspectives to be able to have a sensible discussion, right? Um, but you're saying, BB, that Carney can be trusted to the extent that most politicians can be trusted. But tell me that I don't think even before he came into office, I don't think we caught Trudeau lie or fudge the truth quite as many times as we've caught Mark Carney fudge the truth, right? And certainly Pierre Polyev is the kind of Pierre Polyev also. Polyev, I would say, is a bit more of a transparent guy. With Pierre Polyev, what you see tends to be mostly what you get. He does have that I don't know, MAGA tendency to exaggerate sometimes, or make things look better than they actually are. I guess I wouldn't say exaggerate. He doesn't exaggerate. When I say exaggerate, I mean Trump. Exaggerate is a different level. Trump's level is different here. Polyev has a tendency to massage things a little bit to make it look a little better than it. And maybe that is politics. To be fair, he's a more transparent politician, I would say, Polyev, than Mark Carney. I would say that. But an example of times where he sort of massaged something to make it look better than it is when he talked about the 15% tax cut. Now, I had people in my chat and online believing that Pierre Polyev was actually gonna cut like the tax they were gonna pay. So if you're in, obviously you guys know that the federal income tax, the lowest income tax bracket in Canada is 15%, right? So some people were going away from that, believing that the lowest income tax bracket wasn't gonna pay anything. Right? They were actually believing that he would cut the entire 15% and they were not going to pay any taxes. And I was sitting there, I saw this online. I was like, I don't know who this was for. But I mean, you could argue that wasn't Pierre Poilievre's fault because it's not his fault that people don't do math, right? But, when I did share that, that essentially what he was cutting was 15% of the tax you pay, not 15% from the bracket, But in stating what they were going to cut in terms of income tax, I think Mark Carney, to be fair, was a bit more honest in that regard. He said what he was going to do, which is he was cutting the lowest income tax bracket by 1%. Now, it wouldn't be as sexy if Polyev had said, "Oh, I'm cutting 2.25%," which is actually what he's doing. He's cutting the lowest income tax bracket by 2.25%. And now we're learning that is only going to come to full realization by the end of the fourth year. So technically, actually, Mark Carney is actually giving you more of a tax cut up until the fourth year of whoever wins. It's very interesting, right? BB is heading out. Okay. All right. So it's about that time for us to shut down the stream here. On Monday, I want you guys to tune in. I'm probably going to start around 7, but you see the notification if you're subscribed. If you're not, subscribe right now. And the other thing I was going to tell you, obviously, I have to say thank you to you guys because as of this morning, the podcast officially got officially got monetized. As some of you might know, it takes getting up to you need 1,000 subscribers on YouTube and 4,000 watch hours to become monetized, to have YouTube pay you. And obviously, by now, you guys know I'm not getting paid just yet, so you can trust what I say. I'm just giving you guys my opinion, right? I'm not getting paid by anybody. But now when we do these live chats, you have access to super chats. If you want to support the channel in any way, you have access to super chats. Obviously, those are voluntary. By I don't know when YouTube is going to complete their review, but my whole point here is you guys have helped me this far, with your subscriptions, with your support of the channel. I can't thank you enough, right? I can't thank you enough. Thanks to you guys, I'm on the brink of turning this thing that I started for fun and I was doing for fun to something that actually can start to bring in some bucks, which would be nice. It would be nice to use that to invest in some new equipment. I know some people have told me about how my mic is all shit. So we'll get there. Miriam, as I head out now, says if liberals win a fourth term, it will be their last hurrah. So after 4 years, the mess will be someone else's mess to clean. Don't be fooled, guys. Wow. Yeah, that is the pitch that the conservatives have tried to pitch in this election cycle. Unfortunately for them, they have been drowned out by Trump. Right? So, that's what it is. But if we're being fair here, I don't know that the conservatives are going to do a better job. Like, we don't know that. All we know is that a lot of people that are voting for the conservatives right now are voting for the potential for change, right? We don't know that change is really going to happen. And from the costed platforms, you'll probably have seen that even the conservatives are planning to operate a huge deficit. Not quite the same as the liberals, a little less than the liberals, but they are planning to operate a deficit in the same way. And they're offering less diversification in a time right now where the US doesn't want to trade with us in the same way. They're offering less diversification of the economy. So you could argue that yeah, we would be voting for change if we voted the conservatives, but you never know, right? You never know in terms of what they actually deliver. R says, I know liberals will win, and I know in the next 4 years they will fail. Whoa. Shots fired. And this will show that changing one person cannot make a change. Yes. And that's also part of the message from Poilievre, that the people around Mark Carney are essentially the same people. He's going to have, Francois-Philippe Champagne. He's going to have Melanie Joly. He's going to have Minister Dominic LeBlanc. Even the controversial Stephen Guilbeault is probably going to be in there as well. So that's, there is that talk about how much different can things possibly be with one person, you're absolutely right there to have that concern. I guess we'll see. We will see on Monday. So you guys tune in on Monday. Thank you for joining me today. This is been a shorter stream today for us. But you guys join me on Monday. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time. Take care, guys.